And now is a time where we enter into our meditation together. And as we go into our meditation today, I ask you to focus on energy. Our daily word today of energy. And bring into your awareness and into your mind our affirmation from our daily word. The energy of divine life renews me. The energy of divine life renews me. And just really allow yourself to really focus on that affirmation as you begin to relax into this meditation. Beginning to bring into your mind how you use that energy to focus on achieving those goals that you have set forth in front of you. Those goals that are so important to you. Those goals that you really want to achieve, that you really desire to achieve. How do you use energy to achieve those goals? Also focus on and asking yourself how you use that energy as your strength that carries you through those times in your life that feel challenging. Thinking about how you use that energy to learn and to grow and to constantly change as you move through both this spiritual and this very human journey. Because we know today that at the heart of everything lies that energy. All the energy that we have, all the energy that we need, and all of the energy that we are to achieve our goals, to move us through those times that may feel challenging, and to learn and to grow and to change. Knowing that as the divine being that each and every one of us is, that at any moment we can call upon the power of that God within to channel that energy and to use it in very deliberate ways to have all of the strength that we always need. Knowing that the divine energy that we are, it never tires. It's always full of strength and power. The same as the power of God within that flows through each of us openly and unimpeded. And as we prepare to move into our times of silence, I invite you to just become aware and visualize that power, that energy flowing through your body, giving you the strength that you will always need, using that energy as your source. Visualize and feel as we move into our time of silence. And as you begin to bring your awareness back to this time and place, we know that in our prayers and in our daily lives, that we claim our divine energy. Imagining it always flowing through each and every one of us with a very powerful force. Feeling gratitude at each and every moment for the renewal that this energy brings. Again, claiming our affirmation of the energy of life, divine life, renews me. The energy of divine life renews me today and always. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you, Kay, and thank you, Pete. I heard them rehearsing before the service, and I've been excited about special music. So thank you, Kay. And thank you for being celebration assistant 2 weeks in a row. It's good to have celebration assistants back, right? That way y'all don't have to just listen to me the whole time. But anyway. So one thing I forgot to mention before I did the prayer is that we do have, if you would like some one-on-one prayer time, again on this screen that you're watching us on, if you will look up above the screen on the same page that you're on, website page, There is an option to go into a Zoom call after the service from 11:15 to 11:45, and our prayer chaplain on call today, or that is leading that, is Josie Collins. So please join that if you would like some one-on-one prayer with one of our Unity of Madison prayer chaplains. There's also another thing. I know of someone's birthday today. A little birdie told me, happy birthday, Elaine Stebbleton. So wish you a happy birthday. Mindy's was yesterday, so hey, we're just full of birthdays. What can you say? You can never have enough birthdays. But anyway. All right, so today we're entering our week 4 of our book study. And Kay already mentioned the title. It's Don't Tell Me to Relax by Ralph De La Rosa. And it's been really good. I know, in my own study group and stuff, it's really spurred some really good conversations, and has really just, I think, allowed a lot of us to just become vulnerable and to start to learn to be okay in that place. Especially with people that we care for, that care for us, and that we help rely on and help walk each other through this life together. So anyway, I've really enjoyed it. But it's been a really interesting study so far on emotional resilience and how we each have this within us, and how we can really utilize that emotional resilience to help us navigate our way through life. And through all of the growth opportunities, whether they feel pleasant or not at the moment, that come our way during this life. So one of the first things our author gets into with one of our chapters today, which happens to be chapter 8, is the roles of what he calls the defender and the sage. Now, he uses some basic biology in this chapter, talking first about our role of the defender. And he talks about our instincts and how really we haven't really evolved that much over the centuries. In a lot of ways, of course, but in some ways we haven't. And I myself have read many times over the last few years about how sitting for long periods of time is really bad for our health. And then how they figured it out, these desk jobs and stuff, if you just sit there for long periods of time or just spend your time, lots hours and hours in front of the TV, it's just really not good for our health. But this is due to the fact that our bodies just weren't made for this. They were made to move. Notice how much better you feel when you just move and get the blood pumping. But moving is also the way that our ancestors survived. If you weren't moving, you weren't creating or keeping your shelter in place. You weren't eating, and you weren't caring for your young typically if you weren't moving and doing something. On the other side, however, we have the role of the sage. Now, the role of the sage lies within a part of our brain that contains things like compassion and morality, willpower, and personality. It's those types of things that we often use to gauge our humanity. And this is what also enables us to identify with and to connect to other people. So our author states, it's a little closer to a Buddha, gentle enough to appreciate the innate preciousness of all human life and connect with others, strong enough to weather stormy seas. It's like a sage, confident enough to assert itself and its worth, genuine enough to do the right thing even when nobody's watching. So we've got the defender and we've got the sage. Now, usually our need and desire to survive is the strongest of the two, and that's for good reason, right? We have to survive. That's first and foremost. But we also want to stick very close to the role of the sage because that's what survival is also all about. Survival of the goodness that we are, the way we treat other beings, in the way we live, and even how we live our lives. So fortunately for most of us, at least I'm kind of glad, we aren't still living back in a century to where we're out having to hunt buffalo and other large game in order to survive. We got Pick and Save right around the road or right around the street or Willie Street Co-op. But it's not likely that any one of us is going to be, anytime soon running across, a prairie with a spear in our hand, right? So I think we should take this sage thing and let's just run with it a little bit today. Now, our author, Mr. De La Rosa, tells us that we have 3 basic needs in order to survive. They are safety, feel-good rewards, and belonging. And let's think about it for a minute, because what happens when we have these 3 things? When we have these 3 things, we more than likely feel a sense of fulfillment because we can say, hey, all of our basic needs are being met. We know that we're being taken care of. We know that we're being properly rewarded for our contributions and that we've got community. And how do these things play into our spiritual growth? I had a different school of thought enter my mind when I read this chapter. What if we not only think about these things just for ourselves? What if we also think about these basic needs and how we can share these with others? How is it that we can also help ensure that others are also receiving these basic needs? How would things start to look then? Because many of us are probably aware that there are people out there who don't feel safe. Maybe they feel alienated due to government policies. Maybe someone has lost the roof over their head. Especially right now during this time of COVID, over this course of the year. How might we contribute to help ensure that these people also feel a sense of safety and reward? We've got people out there right now that are having to work 2-3 jobs, and even then feel as if they are barely able to make ends meet every day. What can we do to help to ease their burden as well? And community. What is it that we can do to ensure that we create spaces for all to feel welcome? Do we carry biases that we need to overcome? What can we do to work through those and to perhaps even help other people to learn to work through theirs? So regarding belonging, our author mentions a quote by Brene Brown where she says, "We cannot lose our belonging to each other, but we can forget it." So I wanted to read a little piece out of our book here, and it's on page 125. It's on starting to chapter 9. And our author says, just as a person breathing toxic air would find that in due time their lungs become toxic, it is impossible for us to live in a structurally racist, sexist, transphobic, and class-stratified society without internalizing the stereotypes we encounter about each other. This certainly plays a role in overt bigotry, consciously othering groups of people who don't resemble oneself or one's identified circle, and intentionally discriminating against them. It also results universally, and even against our will, in implicit bias. Implicit bias is the phenomenon of having subtle, unconscious feelings both for and against people and communities based on whether they resemble oneself or a group one identifies with. So let's pay special attention to that last part he mentioned. Implicit bias is the phenomenon of having subtle, unconscious feelings both for and against people and communities based on whether they resemble oneself or a group one identifies with. So I want us to pay special attention to that because we need to ask ourselves why. Because when we ask ourselves why, we can then really dig into it and dig into the root of it. Now the chapter 9 of the book is titled Why We Hate. But is it because we truly hate? Is that truly at our core, or is it because of something else entirely? Now there are two statements in this book that really stuck out to me in relation to this. We humans tend to think, feel, and act like what we perceive as true, and we don't see things as they are. We see them as we are. Now those two statements, for me at least, are extremely powerful because they can remove the lens from our eyes. And when I say lens, I'm talking about the lens that perhaps has forced us to not see things as they may really be. And how does this happen? How do we start to see things through our own lens, through a lens of how things may not even really be? Sounds kind of weird, doesn't it? But part of it is our conditioning. Those beliefs and those biases that we're raised with. I've seen those online quizzes, and you've probably seen them too if you're tied into social media. But they ask people questions. They're supposed to be fun little questions like, do you prefer the beach or the mountains? And it'll take you through all these different questions to try to find out whether you prefer the beach or the mountains. But someone, for instance, might see the beach and find it to be the most beautiful place on earth. Just relaxing, a place you can kick back. And some of us might look at a beach and just see lots of hot sand and water. Right? It's just a difference in the perception and how we perceive things. It's all a matter of our perception, and often, again, even sometimes how we're raised. Maybe our parents took us to the beach lots of children, and we've got really good memories of it. Or maybe one of us was stung by a jellyfish as a child, and we think, oh man, I'd rather be anywhere but at the beach. And this is a small example, but you can see how our perception can so often be set by certain instances in our lives and so forth. But once we become aware of this, we can then begin to the work to break free of certain perceptions. Now, our author mentions, he says, none of us individually created implicit bias. It was here long before we were born, yet if we want to get free of it for ourselves and others, it is our responsibility. Now, he also lets us know that he delves more into this into a later chapter, but he does mention something in this one, and that's equality. He says, equality is inherently vulnerable. It's a social state in which we must come down from our turret, look other people in the face, and be willing to see the world through their eyes. And I don't think anybody here who's ever heard me speak before will find this to be new information, but we must be willing to see the world through a different lens than the one we might be used to. And one of the ways in which we can do this is to seek out ways in which we can view the world through the experience of others, through the experience of someone else, through the worldview of others. How might another person see the world or navigate life in ways that we don't, or ways that we might not have even thought of before? But this can be a really frightening experience, it can be a really frightening experience for some people, though, can it? It requires us to move into new territory. It requires us doing things with the notion that things might very well be different from what we've always believed them to be. And that can be frightening for some people. It may require us to put ourselves out there a little bit, risking some vulnerability. But it is through that vulnerability where we find that openness and that willingness. It may also even require us to get involved with groups or organizations that introduce us to some of those things that we might fear. Or to realize that maybe our perception was just that, our perception. And it's also about remembering that we're spiritual beings. This is very useful when it comes to perception of other people. Different races, colors of skin, genders, sexual orientations. At the end of the day and at the root of it all, we are all still spiritual beings. Those things we see, those things that we perceive as being different are just that, perception. Thinking that we're separate also plays into that, because that is also perception. Thinking that we shouldn't be involved in something because, that's happening to that group over there, so I shouldn't concern myself with it. It's got nothing to do with me. Well, the thing that's happening to that group over there is also happening to you, because there is no separation in this oneness. We can perhaps decide that it is in that oneness that we want to experience life. Truly experience life rather than merely sitting back as spectators, again, via our own perception. Now, every morning I've got this meditation book that I go through, and it's got a different meditation for every day, and it's called Meditations on Intention and Being, and it's by Rolf Gates. And I was thinking yesterday as I read my morning meditation, it really fit into our talk, and it's a little long, so I just kind of ask you to bear with me for a moment. But it's called The Appearance of Things. And he said, as children, we learned about the world from the outside in. The name of things really mattered. If you knew the name of something, you knew what it was. It was almost as if knowing the name of something was the same as understanding it. That's a chair. That's a dog. I'm a boy. She's a girl. We learn to label things and then respond to our labels. As parents, we tend to applaud this process, encouraging our kids to name everything around them, and reinforcing the idea that labels matter. Unfortunately, our labels can be the bars of our mind-made prison. The first time this became clear to me was when I considered how it felt to be labeled a racist term. How someone calling me a name had the power to make me feel awful. Later, the grade I received on a test was so important, I thought nothing of cheating to get an A. The name someone called me or the letter on my test had the power to define me. The world of labels was also extremely confusing. Things tended not to add up. Killing is bad, so we like to kill others. We are all God's children, except those people over there. Trying to arrive at the truth using labels turns out to be a dead end. Many of the things we were taught would make us happy don't make us happy. We find that we no longer have the ability to settle for the appearance of things. We find that we don't just want the appearance of having a life. We want the experience of it. I mean, the timing of that was just perfect for today's talk. But our author, Mr. De La Rosa, he uses the proclamation of something we've heard a lot about lately and that we should continue to hear a lot about lately. Black Lives Matters. He uses that as an example in this book. And from my own personal experience, I've had family to ask me why I care, why it should matter to me. But our author breaks it down quite nicely, in my opinion, and this is on page 143 if you have the book. He says, this is among the reasons for proclaiming Black Lives Matter. It invokes our need to belong as we are. It invites neuropsychological factors that correlate with emotional resilience. In the face of trauma, it can help one move from the limbic system sense of, this is happening to me as an individual. Maybe it's random, or maybe it's my fault. I'm alone in it, and I'm not sure what to do. To the humanized sense of, this is happening to us as a community. It's not random. This has been happening to my people for centuries. This is our struggle. Other people understand specifically what I'm going through. This makes me want to take action. And see, that community is a part of all of us, regardless of our skin color. Jesus didn't preface any of his words with, hey, that white guy over there, or that black woman standing right there. Jesus never used that language of separation. His words were all about oneness and inclusion. Not that perception that we're somehow different because we see the world through this lens of our own perception. Those perceptions being based on what we've likely, again, only been taught to believe. So can you start to see the difference a little bit? But these things must be brought to the forefront, right? So that we can begin to work through perceptions that just may not be 100% accurate. Heck, maybe you're even part of a group that moves through this life with privilege that not everyone has. And due to that privilege, haven't really been able to fully feel what it's like to view life through the eyes of another person. Will working through some of these things make us feel comfortable at times? Well, yeah, it's going to. But so what? It's in that discomfort that we can begin to change. It's where we can, like I mentioned earlier, view the world through the experiences of others. So I ask today, are you ready to view life through the experience of another person? Are you ready to move through your own perceptions? Are you ready to see things through a new lens? What about the lens of another person? Are you perhaps ready today to see the world as it truly is? And what about spiritually? Are you ready to really understand what exactly community truly is? It's not you and it's not me. It's us. It's each and every one of us. And I don't care what so-called ex-leaders have said or continue to say. There is no you over there. There's no you across the border. There's no you that lives in this state, no you that lives in that state, no you that's this political party or you that's this political party. There's no evil side. It's all us. Each and every one of us deserves to feel safe and deserves to feel a part of this community. So I say today, let's do this. Let's start to work to move through some of these implicit biases. Let's look at each and every person, not as Pete, not as Kay, not as all of you out there. Let's look at it as us. Namaste.